And good evening from the Eyewitness News Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Lee Goldberg. As promised, we wanted to hop on and carve out some time to talk about tonight's, it's hard to call it a storm. It's really a front coming through and a pretty wicked cold air outbreak. But in terms of what we'll probably deal with going forward in the winter, let's just consider this kind of a winter training, you know, sort of shaking off some of the rust of forecasting some change in precipitation across the area. But more so, this is all about the cold that's crashing in tonight. And of course, it's the coldest air of the season. All right, so let's start where we are. Thank you, by the way, for clicking on. We've got a lot of clouds out there, but this is a view off to the west from Midtown, and we can see across the Hudson into New Jersey. Visibility isn't terrible. That just is an indication of the precipitation intensity. It's fairly light rain. One thing is, you know, we've lost 10 degrees from our daytime high. We're now down into the upper 40s. The breezes are picking up out of the northwest. It's definitely a chillier, more raw feeling that's coming in now. So headlines continue to be a quick-hitting rainstorm is the major theme of this event. And again, not much of a storm. The precipitation is winding down between 10 o'clock tonight and about 1 in the morning as it pulls off the east end of Long Island. In terms of snow accumulation, the snow is actually winding down in the Catskills. There may have been some coatings. There's still some snow in the mid-Hudson valleys, a couple spots getting flurries near the I-84 corridor, but not really much about snow accumulation. It may be about some slick spots. I mean, it's damp enough to the north, and now temperatures are dropping into the mid-30s and the low 30s over the next few hours. There could be a couple of slick spots, although I do think that northwest wind will kind of blow dry everything before there's, like, you know, widespread icing conditions. The Accuweather alert that we put out, that's for tomorrow. That's 35 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts, especially first half of the day. I mean, it's still windy in the afternoon, but the strongest winds are probably through lunchtime, and it'll feel like 20s during the afternoon hours. Okay, so these are actual temperatures here. We've dropped to 34 in Monticello, 38 Montgomery. It's still in the low 40s from Nanuet to Katona to Westport, but when we show you Westport temperatures in the early evening shows, we're in the low and even some middle 50s. The cold front has now cleared the coast. Maybe it's just getting past Montauk right now, but we're at 53 there. But pretty much widespread 40s and even 30s off to the north and west. So basically, we go from today's high of 57 to a wind chill in the morning that'll be in the mid-20s. So it's basically your normal November feel to a typical New Year's Day morning, where it'll feel like it's in the mid-20s and actual temperatures in the upper 20s and 30s. All right, so here's the radar right now. I mean, not terribly impressive. You see a band of light rain here. It's a little steady over parts of southern New Jersey and actually over Raritan Bay. There's a little shower there. Light rain off to the north, and then there's the patchy snow. Look, it's already dried out here in the Poconos and Catskills and northwestern New Jersey. So we are seeing a couple of flurries or ice pellets mix in places like Hopewell Junction and Beacon, maybe down to Carmel, over into parts of northernmost Rockland County, maybe in a place like Tuxedo. You know, but this is, the roadways are just going to be wet. We have temperatures that are still well above freezing, so we're not talking about any big problems with roads there. There's also a couple of flurries near the Danbury area as well. So for the next couple of hours as this winds down and cold air begins to work in, there can still be a couple of wet snowflakes to end this in Fairfield or Westchester, Orange, Putnam County. You know, not into New York City. I don't even think it gets down to Bergen County. And let's see, we're in the mid-40s here as this comes to an end. And instead of like at 2 o'clock in the morning time period ending like I was talking about yesterday, I mean, it's more like 1. I mean, even 12:30. So it's just there's not enough time for this cold air to wrap in and turn everything over to snow, which is a good thing. But that still doesn't spare us from all the cold air that's pouring in overnight. So tomorrow morning, we're in the upper 20s to middle 30s. You've got sunshine. You've got a gusty wind, though. It's basically ineffective sunshine. And you know what? You know the best time actually to see a snowflake in New York City could actually be during the first part of tomorrow into the early afternoon. Still could be some flurries or a snow shower that comes in on that cold wind. So that wouldn't be shocking to see that. And just looking at the winds, they're already picking up out of the northwest. They'll even be stronger tomorrow morning, maybe some gusts over 35. And then they'll start to back off a little bit tomorrow afternoon, and then certainly tomorrow night, you'll notice that the winds diminish and we'll have a much calmer Saturday. So in terms of wind chill, I mean, this is during the overnight. I mean, even when we see an Eyewitness at 11, we're going to have wind chills in the teens and 20s. Well to the north and west, and in fact, wind chills will be dropping through the 30s even in New York City. By tomorrow morning, wind chills are in the teens and 20s, and during the afternoon hours, I would say the highest wind chill in New York City is probably about freezing or so. Fast forwarding to Saturday morning, look at these numbers. Now, this is the coldest since early March. You're going below freezing in New York City, widespread 20s and teens out there. So plan accordingly at your home for that, because this is a pretty dramatic freeze here. So whether you're unhooking some of the garden hoses, just be aware that's a really hard freeze as we go into Saturday morning. By the way, one change, if you didn't get to see our early evening shows, Saturday had been projected as a really sunny day until today. I do think there's a little bit more cloudiness in the afternoon hours mixing in, partly sunny overall, but that's going to put a cap on temperatures on Saturday. But it's light wind, but temperatures are struggling to about 40 during the day. So with those temperatures I showed you on Saturday morning, there is now a freeze watch out for the 5 boroughs of New York City and parts of Essex, Hudson, and Union counties in New Jersey for the first time this year that we'll get to that freezing mark. The average freezing time in New York City would be about November 21st. That's a 30-year average, right? So it's going back to 1989. Last year it was on the 14th of November, the year before on the 10th. It took until December 9th in 2016, but the average now over the 30 years was the 21st. I think when I actually started here in 1996, I want to say the 30-year average was closer to the 11th or 12th. So that's gotten progressively later over the years. So what we're doing is this is number one of a double dip that we're going to have in temperatures over the next 7 days. So we crash to about 40 tomorrow and stay there on Saturday. We got a nice little bounce back. Sunday's a nice day of the weekend, and Monday's pretty good too. And then we tank again. It's a pretty similar system next Tuesday and Wednesday, although this one, there might be a few more of us may actually see some snowflakes by the time we get to Tuesday night. The changeover may be a little faster in the system. The cold push is a little stronger. One thing I do want to tell you about, one of the reasons here why we didn't get a lot of snow out of this was basically it was just a glorified cold front instead of having a coastal low form. When we were really nervous about maybe some snow even crashing down to the city, we thought maybe an area of low pressure could form along the front and kind of, really wave up and get strong and wind up along the coast. Instead, that didn't happen. It's going to mature and it's going to happen by later tonight and tomorrow, but that's only going to give us the big, strong, cold winds. It's not going to change the rainfall over to snow. Before I get to this extended pattern, because I'm going to show you if we're going to have any of these cold air outbreaks going right through the middle or even latter part of November, Sarah from Digital has stopped by and she may have a couple of questions.
I have at least one. Vincent is asking if the weather that's coming to NYC right now, is it any sign of what's to come this winter? He even went as far as to ask about a white Christmas.
What was his name? Vincent?
Vincent. Vincent,
thanks for asking the question. In fact, that's a great segue to look at this pattern going forward. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this at different points here. And these are the steering winds, okay? So the northern branch of the jet stream right here, the subtropical jet here. When the two work together and phase, then you get pretty sizable storms, pretty juicy storms. It can obviously give birth to some coastal storms. And what we've seen is a very active northern branch track right now. So if you look at the purples, that's really chilly air, okay? Now, early through October, we had much of that cold was really going into the Rockies. And I'm going to stop this and pause it for a second because it bypassed what I wanted to show you there. Okay. I'm just going to, now I'm going to advance it again. Okay. All right. So there's the current dip in the jet stream there. So we get a cold pool of air, big trough in the east. We get our chill where we're struggling to get to 40 degrees tomorrow. Now, if I advance this, this is our moderation that happens later in the weekend into early next week. So that core of that jet lifts a little bit north. We get a little bit more of a hybrid kind of Canadian Pacific air mass coming in. Temperatures get back into the 50s. But then there's a second charge of colder air, and see how the trough, the dip, is even sharper than what we've seen in the current outbreak. So that means that we're actually going to have even colder air coming in on that Tuesday and Wednesday. And the way that that's shaped, maybe a coastal low can ramp up in intensity a little faster, allowing us for a changeover from rain to snow. And maybe more of us see snow and maybe even a small accumulation there Tuesday night. After that lifts out, if we look into the rest of mid-November, there's still an active northern branch of the jet stream, but the amplitude, if you will, of these little dips, it's not as great. So I don't think we're going to have as severe cold outbreaks the second half of the month. I still think we're going to remain normal to maybe even below normal with our temperatures, but I don't think that the severity is going to be like, okay, fast forward to late December, January every week. I don't think that's going to happen. I think things are going to level out a little bit more. Go ahead.
Roger is asking, when on average do we see the first snowfall in the area? And I'm assuming by area he means in the city.
Yeah, right, because obviously, we start to see snowfall in our northern and western suburbs. You're more likely to see it in November. Remember last year in the city, of course, we had, I think it was the 14th, right? We had 6.5 inches of snow. But typically it takes a while, and definitely in recent years we haven't seen our first measurable snow till we get into December. We certainly have a setup here, though, where a November snowfall isn't out of the question with this sort of early season charge of the northern branch of the jet stream. So I wouldn't be surprised if, it follows suit where, okay, we've had our first freeze a little earlier, maybe we'll have our first measurable snow in the city a little earlier. Now, that's not to say, now we can have this sort of, get out of the gate fast winter in November, but just like last year, if you remember, we had the 6.5 inches in November, and then, it didn't mean a total winter onslaught all winter long. I mean, we had our decent storms, but it wasn't blockbuster. And so this doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, this is the way it stays and it's just going to be a marathon of a winter and an endless winter. So that I don't judge the winter by what November does. We're just off to a fast start. Anything else, Sarah? Okay, while I'm waiting for Sarah, I'll just give you the 7-day AccuWeather forecast. We've got blustery and cooler conditions tomorrow, 40, feeling like 20s and 30s. It's calmer on Saturday, only around 40, but at least there's less wind, so it shouldn't feel as harsh. Sunday's a nice mild day. If you notice, temperatures really don't drop much on Saturday night, 40 to 37. Then we're up in the mid-50s both Sunday and Monday. I do think clouds will limit sunshine on Monday. We'll probably stay dry during the daylight hours, maybe late north and west. There's some rain coming in. Rain is likely at night, and then that rain may mix or change over to snow. It's still too early to iron out the details, but Tuesday has a setup where we start out mild and temperatures actually start to free fall during the afternoon hours. So we go by 45 during the day to 26 at night, and then just like tomorrow, we have this blustery day next Wednesday where 30s feel like teens and 20s. Then that's a slow recovery after that. Go ahead.
One more from Sam, more of a science question.
His last name isn't Champion, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay.
What causes these temperature dips from the north like this?
Okay, so basically what's happening right now is, we continue our battle going from the warm season to the cold season, and it's really just the orientation of the steering winds. So it's, the differential heating that happens around the globe, and that's going to, in the end, cause wind. You have weather systems. You have weather systems that are being steered by the jet stream, and the way these patterns continue to propagate across the country and across the world will carry these various weather systems and air masses across the country just to keep things in balance. So, we go through periods, and, typically they can be some weeks where, you have the cold air is more focused out in another part of the country, and then you get to a certain period, and when we start getting into it, and that can actually sometimes last seasonally. I mean, it was one of the reasons why we had more of a temperate summer overall, while you were hearing about broiling conditions over the rest of the country. So there could be patterns that persist a little bit. There's also different oceanic and atmospheric interactions that will determine various patterns. So, for instance, right now we have a very progressive pattern because we don't have what's called the North Atlantic Oscillation is in a positive phase. So typically what happens with that, and I won't go into the tech of it, but basically systems can move right along and don't really get blocked up at the coast. So your jet stream is moving right along, storm comes, it goes. Sometimes they don't have a chance to really ramp up in intensity in a short period of time, but when that NAO may go negative, then maybe we are a little bit more prone to more coastal systems, to more significant cold air outbreaks, or at least that aren't so transient, that they last longer. So there's all these things I'm kind of throwing up a lot against the wall for you, but there's the idea is that right now, the way the steering winds are configured, we have a big trough over the east, and that's why we're colder than normal, and it looks like it's going to last for a week or two, and then I think as we get toward the second half of the month and then toward Thanksgiving, we may not be as cold as we are tomorrow and next Wednesday as we advertise. That it, Sarah? All right, so that's the way it is shaping up. Hopefully got what you needed out of that. I'll just go back one more time just to give you the headlines. Quick hitting rainstorm's going to wind down by 1 o'clock in the morning. Snow accumulations confined to the far northern suburbs. Maybe a few places ended some snowflakes well to the north. And the AccuWeather alert for tomorrow for 35-mile-per-hour gusts and wind chills in the 20s. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put together my 11 o'clock show. Hope you're able to watch that on television. Always thank you for clicking on ABC7NY. Follow our weather feeds. Personally, follow my Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm always putting content in there, even in between shows on the weather situations. And, of course, always visit us here on ABC7NY. Stay safe tomorrow morning. Make sure you bundle up, dig out that heavy winter coat. Watch out for a couple of slick spots off to the north and west, and we'll thaw out by the end of the weekend. Thanks again. Have a good night.